the door and said I like.
Marvelous, fantastic. Well, I think people are kind of settled in and sufficiently satisfied that we've not definitely had better summers than them anyway. So we'll get going. For anyone who's on the call who's joining us for the first time, my name's Luke. I'm the W Club manager at the Whisky Shop. So we want these events to be super interactive. So do get your questions and your tasting notes in the chat. And obviously this is going to be recorded, so some of you probably be watching this as recorded. At the end of the call, we're going to be giving out a wee discount code that gives you 15% off all the whiskies we tried tonight. Now, before we really get into it, and I hand you over to Keith and Luke, we've got some a point of order, I suppose. What would you say? That's been brought to our attention. There's actually a error on the label printing, which I emailed some of you this weekend with the link with the thing. So the sherry cask peat smoke 55 ppm is actually bourbon cask, not sherry cask. So really apologies for anyone any confusion caused by that, or anyone who was looking forward to trying the whiskies in or that particular whiskey. Maybe we'll have it on a future tasting, you never know. But there's still 6 tremendous whiskies here, and it should be a really great night. What we'll do is I'll let Keith and Luke introduce themselves, and then we'll figure out what the running order is for the night. I'll let you tell us that, Keith. And then we can get going. I see there's already a great question there from Rodney, which we'll come on to in a couple of moments. So Keith, do you want to introduce yourself and where you're coming from?
Yeah, good evening everyone. I'm Keith Cruickshank. I'm the Distillery Manager at Benromach Distillery, which is in lovely sunny Forres. I'm not in Forres at the moment, as you can see, and there's not a chimney ground out of my left shoulder either. I stay in a small town called Keith, the same as my name, and it wasn't named after me, I'm afraid, but yes. So yeah, I've been distillery manager for 25 years. I've been at the distillery. So I came to the distillery when we reopened it back in 1998. I've been in the industry since 1991. This is 30 odd years, my God. Yeah, so I started off on the shop floor up the way, and that's the way I did it, old school. I started off as a warehouseman, then went on to production, which is really, production's when you move from warehousing, which is moving the cask barrels. And then you move into production, which is the actual distillery, the production sites, all lovely distilleries. That was normally classed as a promotion, really. You went on to shifts. It was less manual and they paid you more money, you know? So yeah, I went to production, and then I moved, I actually worked for Chivas Brothers prior to this in different distilleries. And then in 98, gone at fair, we're looking for a distiller to start Benromach. So I took the leap of faith back then, and my manager then retired in 2000. I took over in 2000, and the rest is history. So I've been the fortunate one to be at the distillery the whole time. So I'm the constant one, as they say, all the way through. So luckily I've made or been part of the whole production process for all the whiskies that you have here tonight. So it's always it's more of a privilege than anything else for me to be able to have that. It's not often you get the opportunity in your working life to be able to start a distillery from scratch and then see all the products coming through. So yeah, that's me. I'm a sort of distillery manager. So yeah, it's not it beats work for living. It's a good job.
It sounds exciting. And so you can take all the credit and the blame tonight. So for everything
absolutely, that's the way it is. Yep. You can only take the credit if you take the blame as well, like Ken. So that's what they always say. If there's old whiskies, and it's always my fault. It's always Keith, because he's the only one that's been here all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine you're in front of the press. You know, the lads give everything tonight, but it just didn't happen. No, that's brilliant. And as we were discussing before we came live, the order you wanted to go in was the 10-year-old, the 15-year-old, the cask strength, the 21, the TWS exclusive.
Yeah, and then we'll finish off with the smoky one at the end. So
Yeah, perfect. I just know there's a few people on who like to get the drams poured right at the start, so we'll get that up. Luke, seeing as you're here, do you want to give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, no problem at all. So my name's Luke Todwood. I've now been with Gordon and MacPhail for just over 6 years. Prior to that, I worked for the distribution company for Beam, Centauri and Edrington Group, which was then known as Maxium. Now just sort of known as Edrington, as it seems to have changed names multiple times in that period of time. So looked after brands for Macallan, Highland Park, Glenrothes, Auchentoshan, Vermora, a whole series of single malt Scotch whiskies, as well as some other non-whiskey related brands, including cutting my teeth on the likes of Apple Sours and Aftershock back in the day. So I've got a huge spectrum of spirits and stuff in my background. And now work as a regional sales manager for Gordon and MacPhail and look after everything south of the border, including yourselves at the whiskey shop.
Marvelous, and we're lucky to have you, Luke. Apple sours, that brings back some horrific memories. Now, I've never been robbed over so much money in my life. When the day I realized at about 16, 17, after a couple of years of drinking it, that what a waste, it costs the same as tequila and has about the percentage of a high ABV lager. Like, it's like it's not, there's no bang for your buck in your apple sours. But there you go. It has to be done. It's a rite of passage, I suppose. So I suppose we best thing to do is probably to get started on the 10-year-old. I don't know if you agree, Keith, or do you want to? I know you have a slide for us. I don't know at what point you want to.
Yeah, what I've got is if you just what to do is you just pour yourself the 10-year-old, and you can enjoy the 10-year-old. I'm going to share the screen, and I always say a little presentation, but it's never a little presentation when I'm speaking about Benromach. So I just want to kind of go through the history of the distillery and what we tried to do at Benromach when Gordon and MacPhail bought the distillery and that specific style. It's a very simple story, but it's a very specific story of the distillery. So what I'll do is if it's okay, I'll just share my screen at the moment. Everybody got that, yeah?
Yeah, I think we can all see that. If you can't, pop it in the chat there, folks.
No, 15 slides. Oh, I'm going to have to go right back. There you go. Right, anyway. So, the Benromach story itself. So, you can see it's a Speyside distillery. So, for those of you who have never been to Benromach, that's where it is located in the northeast of Scotland. The region that we're in, that's the whiskey region, the Spey Valley, the Speyside region there. It's not a geographical region, but it is a whiskey region. And the River Spey runs from, can you see, not Newton Moor along that way, and it runs right through the heart of the Spey Valley, and it finishes at Spey Bay along the northeast coast. And there's quite a lot of distilleries within that tributary. We are probably the most westerly of all the Speyside. In fact, we are the most westerly of all the Speyside distilleries there. We're about 12 miles from our head office, which is in Elgin. History of the distillery, it was built in 1898. It was designed by Charles Doig and built by Duncan McCallum and F.W. Brickman. One was a Campbellton distiller, and the other one was a Leith spirit broker. Duncan McCallum was actually the poor gentleman that decided that he was going to jump into Campbellton Loch, and he was that poor person that did that. So that was poor Duncan McCallum. So yeah, they were the two founding members of the distillery. 1983, the distillery, unfortunately, was closed by its owners back then, which was Scottish Malt Distillers. We then bought the distillery from United Distillers 10 years after that. So in 1993, Gordon and MacPhail purchased the site and the rights to produce Benromach, the brand, and water rights and such like. So in 1993, they bought the site and they had the task of refitting the whole distillery, and that's what they did. And the summer of 1998, we started producing Benromach single malt whiskey again. 15 years of a gap. Here's some lovely historical photographs of the distillery from the 1930s and 1950s. You'll see the lovely pagoda roof. You'll see the white painted buildings, and then you'll see the direct fired stills in the bottom left, which is quite common back then to have direct fire stills. It would have been oil fired. And here's some of the staff from the 1950s. And that's a picture of the 1970s when it was owned under Scottish Malt Distillers. And if you look in the picture there, you'll see the casks to the right of the malt barn. You'll see all the casks there. The distillery pretty much looked like that, excluding some of the warehouses in the top of the picture when we bought the distillery in 1993. The distillery was in pretty poor condition, to be truthful. And Gordon MacPhail had the task of refitting the whole distillery with new equipment. And as I said, 1983, unfortunately, it was closed. Quite a few distilleries were closed back in the mid-1980s, mainly down to there was a downturn in the whiskey industry for several reasons, to be quite honest with you. Quite a few distilleries closed, and Benromach was unfortunately one of them as well. So the last filling was in March 1983, and all the team would have put their name up on that's the filling store wall. That was common practice to do that. The very last day they filled the casks. Luckily at Benromach, we had the opportunity of having a fast filling again. 15 years later, again, some historic photographs. And there's a history 1983 to 1998. 1998 was the year that I came into the picture. A young man back then, 30 years of age. And that's when I joined Benromach, Gordon MacPhail and Benromach Distillery. Here you see a photograph of the official reopening by Prince Charles in the middle there, or King Charles as we call him now. He got an upgrade. I still call him Prince Charles because I've been calling him Prince Charles in my presentations and tastings for 20 odd years, and it's really difficult to call him King Charles. It's difficult, it's always, but yeah, eventually I'll be able to do it. Anyway, so King Charles in the middle, and then you've got my manager at the time, Bob Murray, next to the King, and then the managing director, Ian Arquette, and the corner of the picture there. And that extremely handsome, debonair young man on the left was me.
Life really does take its toll, Keith, huh?
I normally don't linger about much on this one, but yes, believe it or not, that's me meeting the Prince, the King, sorry, 25 years ago. It just feels like yesterday, but yeah, I remember it very, very well, that October morning.
Do you reckon he remembers it as well?
I think he probably will, to be quite honest with you. He loves whiskey, of course. We all know that.
Yeah.
He's very passionate about whiskey, and especially distilleries closing for such a long time and restarting, and young people in industry and things like that. He likes that, you know. And he was very knowledgeable, and he definitely did his homework, because he did quite a few questions on what I'd done before and how I got to the distillery and such like. So, but I'd like to think he'll remember his lovely wet morning in October in Forres, meeting this lovely distillery. So.
I know I was being a bit facetious there, but it's a brilliant photo and a fantastic memory to have.
It is. It's just one of those things. You only ever do it once. You only ever start a distillery. You only ever make cask number one once, Luckily, we had the opportunity a few years ago when the 20th anniversary of the distillery that we bottled cask number 1, and the proceeds went to the Prince's charities, and the king got the cask number 1, bottle number 1, decant number 1. So it was good that we managed to do that, and the whiskey was beautiful. It was time. You had to bottle it at some point. I was very sad to have it bottled, I must admit, because the cask had been there with me since I started. But whiskey's not an antique. It's there for drinking, enjoying, and sharing. If you want to buy an antique, buy a chair or something like that. Yeah. Whiskey's for drinking, absolutely.
Oh, well said. Tony C's asked in the chat, what was the king asking what an underback does?
An underback. I think he actually knew, to be quite honest with you. But yes, at that point, he was kind of asking me a little bit about the process, but he kind of asked more about you as a person, not so much about the process, really. He was the same when he spoke to Bob, the manager. He was really interested in you as a person and where you came from and what you've done and, your prospects and things like that. So, very, very interested in you, to say the least, rather than the process. He probably had a good idea how whiskey was made because he's been around quite a few distilleries anyway, Ken. So, but yeah. So anyway, this is the motley crew. This is the distillation team we've got at the moment. So there's myself. It's an older photo, to say the least, a little bit. So there's myself, and then I've got a production manager, who's the top right, and then we've got the 4 distillers. We've also got a warehouse team, so I'm responsible for the site, which includes the distillation team and the cask warehousing team. And that's the collective team there, which is the guides and the visitor centre as well. And here is the latest boy band, Wrong Direction, as I call them. So this is the warehouse team, so this is their latest photographs. So they love this photographs. They really do. They think they're so cool in these photographs, again. So we've got individual photographs of them as well. So yeah, this is one part of our marketing campaign, was to do this handcrafted, fast hand campaign of Benromach. So they like to get all the guys individually, and they did like that photographs, definitely. And this is the distillery, so you can compare what the distillery looked like. You remember I showed you a shot in the 1970s. So the distillery building itself hasn't changed too much. The pagoda roof's gone, but you can see the biggest change is the addition of warehouses, and that's been the biggest change at the distillery, is because Benromach is a single malt, and most of the product will be bottled between 10 and 20 years of age. So we need considerable warehousing. We've got 7 warehouses at the moment. You can only see 5 of them there, but 7, and another 2 planned for next year. So all the land at the top of the site there we own, and they're all earmarked for warehousing. Because it's easy making a whiskey, but you need to build warehouses to mature it, unfortunately, and they're not that cheap either, to say the least. Now, here's the brand story. This is all the marketing bit. Now, you'll notice I'm not a salesman and I'm not a marketeer. You just get it as it is, and that is it, what you get from me. I am absolutely production. I make whiskey, and that's the most. I probably couldn't even tell you how much most of these whiskies retail for, to be quite honest with you. However, I can tell you what they taste like and how we made them and what the team contribute to the whole process for these products. So we've got the locally sourced barley, long fermentation, copper pot stills, fast fill casks, made by hand for genuine character. This is one of our latest campaigns, fast hand, made by Hanford. The reason we speak about this is, you could say, oh, but everybody says every distillery is handcrafted and it's all that. But here at Benromach, it truly is. It's not lip service. We come to the distillery. When we opened the distillery in 1998, we kept with to its original whiskey making techniques as absolutely possible. And that's one of the key things about Benromach. It's very traditionally made. We produce a Speyside character that would be typical of whiskey made in the 1950s and 60s in Speyside. Traditionally made with that lovely, elegant smokiness, which would be typical of floor maltings you would have had back in the 1950s and 1960s. And the reason Gordon MacPhail chose to produce that style is because they could. It's as simple as that. And it's an old Speyside style that they bottled many decades before as an independent bottler back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And this is the style that they chose to sort of reintroduce back as their Speyside character, their true handcrafted character. Now, let's get on to the most important part, which is the whiskey. You've heard me ramble on for the last, 15, 20 minutes. So we've got 6 whiskies to taste tonight. Every single one of the whiskies have been made since 1998 at the distillery. The range you see in front of you is a core range. So this is truly what Benromach is. We have that lovely maturation in sherry and bourbon, and we have that delicate smokiness and that lovely maltiness, spicy notes coming through. Now, this is typical of the core style, the core flavours in all the Benromachs, really, but they do have a different sort of personality depending on the age and such like. So that's typical of the core. Yeah, every distillery has to have its DNA or a core. You can't be everything to everybody. It's great to have all these wood finishes and all these different types and all the rest of it. That's great. Well, but I always say there's nothing wrong. If somebody says, what's different? What's new at Benromach? There's nothing wrong with saying absolutely nothing. However, that's not the world we live in, is it? It's nice to have these lovely different whiskies to support the core style, and that's our ethos at Benromach. The core style is absolutely the driving one, so everybody knows what to expect in that lovely character from the distillery. But we do have contrast range, and I think there was a question: do we have any organic whiskies? We don't. We don't have any organic whiskies here tonight, unfortunately, but we do produce a single malt organic whiskey, which is we've produced that since 2000, first bottled in 2006. So yes, we do produce organic whiskey, but unfortunately we don't have that here tonight. Now the first whiskey, you've probably all drunk it by now. If it was the Ben 10, it's a lovely supping whiskey. It's one of my favourite whiskies, if not the favourite I have. The reason I say that is because the Benromach is bottled at 43%. It is chill filtered. This is typical of how I would describe what we do at Benromach, the core flavours. It's got a lovely golden amber colour. It's matured in bourbon and sherry. It's got a little bit more of a sherry influence. You'll see out with the colour. You can get that in the nose as well. It's quite a fruity character coming through. A lovely maltiness. On the nose, you'll get that smokiness coming through, which is what I like. With the addition of water, it even takes out even more of that smokiness. But again, the addition of water or not the addition of water is entirely your own personal preference. But for me, for the Ben 10, as we call it, the 10-year-old, I like to add a little bit of water just to open up that level of smokiness. And I guess that's what I like about Benromach, is that level of smokiness. It's there. It's 12 ppm, which is standard, lightly peated Benromach. And that lovely, elegant, delicate smokiness comes through in all the Benromachs. It does differ in its intensity, depending if it's 15 or 21 or the 10. But the level of smokiness is the same in all of these. So yeah, they get a lovely maltiness. It's always got this Moorish kind of character. It's almost like an old school whiskey, and it
It's
has
got,
that lovely Ovaltine Horlicks type flavour coming through, which is very wholesome.
There's almost like a honey drizzled oats, like with that maltiness, almost like a Cranachan flavor coming through. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean the balance is there between. I mean, it's got the taste and notes. It's got soft vanilla develops alongside gentle smoke. Lovely taste notes they come out with. Really, really elegant way of they describe it. But yeah, you do get that vanilla, coconut, the honeyness coming through there as well. We do have bourbon and sherry casks, and it's that balance. So we marry these two casks together, and hopefully that gives a nice balanced character within the whiskey, and that's really what you're looking for when you're using bourbon and sherry. When you marry them together, you have to have a balance there. It's not really ideal to have one dominating the other. If you're going to do that, you might as well just have single cask bottlings.
Yeah.
But the core style, we always use the sherry and the bourbon with a slightly more higher addition of sherry casks in there. So
there's some great comments coming in. Bob has said visited in 2011 and 2020, picked up the 25-year-old and 30-year-old, 72 pounds and 149.99 first time, and the 20th anniversary bottle on my second visit. Excellent place to visit. Jeff has said, did you have any maturing casks when you purchased the distillery?
Yes. Gordon and MacPhail bottled Benromach under their Connoisseur's Choice range as an independent bottler. So Gordon MacPhail had stocks of Benromach. They've always had stocks of Benromach. Obviously, when they became proprietor, they then were moving from independent bottlings to proprietary bottlings. They changed the label, they changed the bottle style. And normally in the industry, what happens is when you do buy a distillery, stock is made available to you from the company you buy from. Normally, that is how it's done. Good quality stock. So United Distillers would have made stock available to us, and over the years we've managed to acquire good stock and some bad stock as well. Because sometimes it's better to keep a hold of the bad stuff as well, in case it gets out there. Luckily, there wasn't an awful lot of poorer quality casks. They were all good quality casks. So, but yeah, we did have stocks of Benromach. We had some from the 1960s, 70s, and very early 80s. At the moment, we are down to late 1970s and early 1980s, which is bottlings for our 40-year-old whiskies and such like. So, but I think we do have one that should be released. I can't really say what it is, but yeah, we do have an older Benromach that'll come out at some point, Ken. So yeah, but we did have some.
Tell us, we're all friends here. We won't tell anyone.
Oh no, I can't. Luke, I'm not allowed to say. Luke knows exactly what I'm speaking about, Ken. But yeah, watch this space. So, but very limited. The stocks of these legacy whiskies, they are extremely limited of the Benromach. But that's been 25 years now in the making. So it just seems like yesterday. But we've now got stocks of Benromach. You wouldn't even think there was a gap in production, because we've got that kind of full range there as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, 1998, that is a lifetime ago, But the
well, you've just to wait. It's a strange thing, Time does roll on. That young man back in 1998. I mean, I used to remember thinking, wow, 10-year-old Benromach, is a millennium away. It's so far away. It was, but it came round. 2009 came round, and then it's it's good to look back. It's good to look back and remember. It is.
It's like the I know you said before we came on, you're not a big football fan, but at the weekend, for anyone on here who is, at the weekend they had Roy Keane was on the telly with recently retired Theo Walcott.
Oh.
And Theo Walcott made his debut as a 17-year-old the year Roy Keane retired from professional football. And they're both on the telly together. And I was like, Jesus, I remember Roy Keane playing like it was yesterday. And now there's a guy on the TV with him who's had an entire career span in the intervening time.
It's quite funny because these bottlings come out, and I've got quite a young team. I've got one distiller. He's got his 10 years this year, but the rest are all, less than 5-6 years. So it's like, and generally, so I've got the pleasure of just remembering. I remember when these whiskies were put into cask, all the organics. We've got a special 2004 organic being released at the Visitor Centre this week. 2004. I remember making it in 2004 and put it into the cask, which is, it's quite scary when you can remember back to that. And you think that's a 19-year-old whiskey now, which feels quite young. Because every time I think back to 2000, I think, oh, that's not that far away. But it is. It is, and that's quite scary because a 19-year-old whiskey is reasonably mature whiskey, to say the least. Yeah. So,
well, it's whiskey that could buy itself a drink, as the old cliche goes. But the we've got some great tasting notes in here as well, Keith, from our W Clubbers. Malted milk biscuits, says Graham.
Yep.
Getting a
biscuit
bit of butter.
Note, nice, yeah. It's a lovely biscuity note, Ken. I think we get that from the mashing process, and it gives a wholesomeness. It's really hard to describe what I mean by that, but it's the only way I can ever describe it is when you drink Ovaltine and Horlicks, how that makes you feel, and it's a feeling. That's exactly what it is, like, Ken.
Well, because we got another one like that, which is like fruitcake with a strong cup of tea. I see what you mean there about your Horlicks as well.
Yeah, it's just that. Honey, malted cereal notes and stuff like that. So yeah, it is one of my. To be honest, it is my favourite. I am no shame in saying that whatsoever. The 10-year-old came out in 2009. It's just been that. I guess it's almost like your first child. It's always very, very special.
Well said. A couple more tasting notes there before we move on. We got Reverend Kevin White says honey vanilla, remarkably smooth for a 10-year-old. I like the subtle smoke, the subtle smoke, but there's a sweetness of toffee. And Paula said dry hay on the nose with some maltiness, taste of gentle spice / ginger, whiff of smoke at the very end. Can't grumble with this. A great entry dram. And that one is available. It's £41 on our website, but you get 15% off tonight. So it brings it well under 40. So that's a good value dram to start the evening, I would say, Keith.
It's a bargain. Absolute bargain, like, yeah.
Yeah, especially this day and age. You couldn't fill your car for that.
It is. So the rain on in Keith. It started to rain in Keith. Lovely sunshine today, and now it's beginning to, the heavens are opening. So anyway, so next whiskey.
Yeah.
In between the whiskies, I've got some lovely photographs here for you to look at. Now look at that one. Look at that sky. Now that's obviously a combine harvester. And that is an organic crop. So that's actually about 4 years ago. 2018, before all that COVID stuff. 2018. And it was September, because we usually harvest a bit later up here than down in England, just because of the climate, obviously drier, whatever, longer growing season. So that's an organic barley being harvested there. And that's a lovely shot of it there. So yeah, our organic, we do single farm organic. So we buy the barley direct from the farmer, and then we get it's malted and then comes to the site, and then we produce it. That barley there, which gets harvested late August, normally September, will then get malted, and then will become spirit in January the following year, and then obviously matured for normally about 8-9 years organic. Next whiskey is
while we're on the barley, before we start on the 15. A question there from Angela asking, is the barley from the Black Isle?
From the Black Isle? No. Well, the organic barley.
Well, I presume maybe whichever.
All the barley, most of the barley is grown on the east coast of Scotland. We always source Scottish grown, Scottish malted barley. So if you imagine, you all know the northeast of Scotland. It's very lush. It's excellent for growing barley. It's the main cereal up here is barley. At this time of year, the fields are fields of gold when you see them because it's all barley, and that really supports the Scotch whisky industry and the brewing as well. But yeah, the barley's grown along the Black Isle, but we don't really know exactly. We just know that it's from the northeast of Scotland, and all the maltings are in the northeast of Scotland because the maltings have to be reasonably close to the farms and the grain stores where they store the barley. But some of that barley we use could quite easily come from the Black Isle along the northeast, along that way. So yeah. So the next whiskey is the 15-year-old. This is the older sibling to the 10-year-old. Now, I always speak about the Benromach as a family. Now, this is only me. I'm the only crazy one that actually speaks about it like that because of my personal involvement with the distillery and such like. And I always speak about the 10, the 15, the 21. It's just been, they're all related. They're all siblings to each other. They're different ages, and my God, they've got different personalities. And I've got two sons, and they're no different either. You know, I've got a 25-year-old and a 20-year-old, and they are completely different. But they have, you know, they've still got the same DNA, and I like to think that whiskey is the same. They're all built from the same DNA, but they've all got different personalities depending on their age and such like, different casks. And that's the way I always think of the whiskey. So the 10 is sherry and bourbon. It's bold. It's got the lovely smokiness there, the maltiness, the sort of spiciness coming through there. The 15, however, is the same cask as a 10, but if you, on the nose, you see that straight away you're getting a lot more of that influence from the sherry cask coming through. You get the chocolate and sort of the banana notes coming through there. A lot of sort of lovely fruity character coming through. The smokiness is a lot. It's subdued to a certain extent. It's not as full on as the 10-year-old. That's why I like the 10-year-old a little bit more, because the smokiness is just to my own personal preference, to be quite honest with you. The 15, you need to work it quite a bit to get that smokiness out, and you need to be very careful you don't add too much water and then destroy that beautiful fruity notes that you get from that extra maturation in the sherry cask. So yeah, it's a lovely balanced ram there, but it has a lot more of the sherry character coming through compared to the bourbon cask, and the smokiness is a lot softer. You just pick up the smokiness in the nose, but the additional water will actually open up. The 15's one, it's probably won quite a lot of these gold badges that you see in front of you, these gold medals and all this kind of stuff that you get, which is great. It's great, but you know, it's recognition for the whole team. That it's not just what we make at the distillery; it's everyone that is involved in it. It's never just one person. It's always about a team effort. Absolutely. So
that's not what you said at the start.
No, I know. I'm just being very modest at the moment. That's what it's like. Yeah.
We got some great tasting notes in there, Keith. Tony says a bit more heat in the 15, peppery clove for me. I like. Bob says a touch creamier and smoother. Ian says chocolate and orchard fruits on the palate, a wee hint of spice at the end, which I'm getting more of an earthy nose. It's still sweet and smooth, but reminds me of sweet, fresh cut grass. On the tongue, I get some spice, pepper, more complex. James says the nose is like peated calpol, sweet, summery, and red fruits. Bob says, loving the sherry influence in both drams with the added whiff of peat. Both are winners. Definitely agree with the point about this being a lot more complex, which I think you alluded to as well yourself there, Keith. So there's some great taste notes.
Quite a bit, especially in the sherry character. It's a lot more complex than that. The rich fruit character coming through, and that sort of the figs and spices and that type of characters coming through. So yeah, it's definitely the 15-year-old certainly has been received very well in a lot of markets. It just seems to hit the spot quite a bit. Sometimes the 10-year-old, a lot of traditional Speyside drinkers think it's too smoky, which, you know, it's not smoky really, you know, but I think the 15 hits that spot with the more traditional Speyside drinkers who possibly don't like that smokiness too much, if at all. You know, they think Benromach is really smoky, and it's so much it's not, you know, compared to some of the whiskies, West Coast and such like.
It's interesting because Chris has said there in the chat that stunning burnt toffee apple defo wouldn't add any water, but I'm after adding a drop of water and on your recommendation, Keith, there, and it really for a dram that's 43%, it really does open up. You weren't
not too
underestimating yourself. It's incredibly different with water.
It definitely opens up, and that's just because of the smokiness. It allows it to kind of open up, and as the smokiness opens up, I think it allows everything else round about it to open up. But you just need to be, you all know you need to be very careful with the addition of water, because once it's in, you can't get out, unfortunately, unless you pour yourself another dram, which is a good thing, like, you know. So, but try it neat first, and it's really like anything else. It's up to yourself. You drink whiskey the way you like to drink it. It's as simple as that. Just don't drown it, and don't add anything that's going to change the flavour dramatically to it. But enjoy your whiskey the way you enjoy it.
Yeah, Bob said taste 46. It's that good. So there you go. That's a compliment. This is £75 before your 15% discount. So again, another good value dram. So yeah, especially when age statement drams like this are undergoing a bit of a price change across the market these days. You see a lot more ones creeping up close to 100. So that's really good value. It's at 75 if you ask me. Definitely would pick one up. Chris has said, tried a little water, still keen on it neat. Well, I'm sorry you can't take it back, Chris, but you know, nothing, you know, got to speculate to accumulate. Paula says, I keep getting marmalade on the nose and throughout the palate. Nice. That's good. I was going to make a, you know, be more careful when buttering your toast joke, but marmalade's actually a good taste enough. So
but the 15, as I said, I mean, the 10 and the 15s are kind of two. Luckily, because the only difference between the two products is how long we leave them in cask. The makeup is the same. That if the markets demand more 15, then we can do that. But the sales teams, unfortunately, have to wait because we need to stop selling so much 10s. So the 15 is available, which sales teams just don't get that. They just, you know, we want it now. We want to sell it now. We've got customers who want it. We want it now, okay? So we have that ability. We definitely have that ability. So, and you know, we make it's like the peated Benromach, it's that old traditional style. So, how we divide up the pie or cut the pie depends on the market. They'll decide what we might have. If we sell more 15, we have to sell less 10. It's as simple as that. Or vice versa. If we sell too much 10, there's less 15 available. So, you know, and the thing is, 10 years ago, we only produced a certain amount of whiskey, and that's all we produced. We can't magic any more whiskey in there, that is for sure. So, luckily, over the years, we have increased production. Granted, the first 15 years, we kept at the same production levels. Possibly should have increased sooner, but we didn't. And we increased in 2013, double production, and then 2016. And then 2017, sorry, and then last year we increased production again. So you just wait for these increasing stocks to come along. So there's brown spirit available, as we call it, you know. So, but yeah, you just have to wait.
Well, that's a good segue, because you increased production in 2013, which is also the year that this cask strength was distilled, I believe.
Yep.
So might be
But,
worth pouring that into the glass. And while we're getting that poured and maybe finishing off our 15s,
Yep.
if Luke has been very quiet there all evening, if he's got any thoughts on the first two drams of the night, you could come in like the like when they cut to Jeff on the sideline, you know, for his input.
Yeah, they got Keith Scottish tones or my dulcet Brummy tones, so I don't know which one's going to be more challenging and stuff for everyone. But no, I mean I'm a big fan of the 15. I know Keith's baby was the 10-year-old, and he loves that sort of initial hit of smoke. For me, I like the 15 simply because the fact that it's, for me, got a little bit more balance to it. I think as somebody alluded earlier, that little bit more intensity of sherry character, that little bit more time in the sort of Oloroso cask. And I think somebody mentioned a note just about marmalade. And I think for me, that orange note comes through. You always find a little bit more with sort of European oak and sherry cask, that little bit more kind of orange citrus that will sometimes pop through, as Keith said. Mingled that with sort of nice wonderful figs and dates, and somebody alluded to earlier as well, clove, that wonderful sort of spice. So a little bit more of that kind of that Christmas warming spice I find with the 15. So yeah, just a very, very nice balance for me. But yeah, ask me where my sort of favorites lie, and then we're sort of getting into the cask strength territory, and these are always superb whiskies. So it'd be great to get everyone's feedback on these as we go through.
Marvelous. I suppose that's no better time to come on to the cask strength. Get mine poured.
So yeah, this is our Benromach cask strength. It's a vintage. This one's a 2013, I think we're tasting. We've just moved off the 2012, and we're on to, I think it's batch 1. They love these batches, which just confuses everybody. 2013, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, and everybody says, "Have you tried batch 2? No, I've tried batch 1. Have you tried batch 3? Oh my God, it's vintage 2013. Get grip of yourself, kid." Anyway, so this is our vintage. It's a cask strength 10-year-old, basically. Originally, we used to bottle this as, we called it Benromach 100 proof. And we bottled it at 57% ABV, which in the old money was 100 proof, or pretty much close to it. 57.1 was actually 100 proof. But anyway, so the cask strength, slight bit of water addition, and then take it down to 57%. However, it was a clever idea, and it was a nice idea, but it didn't really work globally in all the markets. America, we had to do a different one for America because their proofing system is different to ours. They double it, obviously. So our 100 proof was 114 proof in the States. So we had to have imperial proof, I think we called it. Was it something like that, Luke?
Yeah. So
that became a challenge. And then trying to give everybody the story of the proofing system and everything, it just became... And of course, in Asia, they prefer the cask strength and a vintage, and that's what they understood, and that's what they kind of wanted. So I think for a global product, it was just having a vintage cask strength was the one. I think 2009 we started, 2008, 2009 we started this cask strength. It's just gone from strength to strength. This one is, yeah, it's 59.7% ABV, which is quite strong. So just go easy with it for a start. Try it neat. It will go down relatively smooth, even at that high ABV. On the nose, which is remarkable in the nose, that it has no very, very little smokiness on the nose at full cask strength. However, with the addition of water, you start to head towards the 10-year-old.
And at what strength does it come off the stills, and what strength do you cask at?
60, well, it comes off the stills at about 70% by volume. We then put it into the cask at 63.5%. So we add a little bit of water, and then we take it off at whatever the strength is, the the cask strength. This one's 59.7, so it's lost a little bit over the 10 years, you know. So it's quite slow maturation we have at Benromach. You know, we get dunnage warehousing, so it's very cool, very constant maturation, which is good. That's just how we do it at Benromach, and it fits in with everything we do. Very traditional way of doing it, the way we make it, and the way we mature it as well. So yeah, the cask strength's brilliant. I mean, it's so smooth, even at 59.7%. Certainly, if it's a bit tough, add a little bit of water, break it up a bit, soften it a bit if you want. But it's yeah.
Well, we've already got some interesting taste notes there from Kevin Wright, Reverend Kevin Wright, who says, "I've got nostalgic old leather mustiness and oak panelled rums, moving to sweetness of slightly smoky, sticky toffee apples. There is a tangy citrus note too." Can you just remind us? I know you've definitely said this, but I'm you know, 2 whiskeys in and not that bright. So the cask makeup of this, and how many casks go into it?
It's still sherry and bourbon casks. It's the same as a 10-year-old. So you've probably got 2/3 sherry, the remainders American white oak we have there. So yeah, it's and that's the makeup. It's exactly the same makeup as the Benromach 10-year-old. We just leave it, you know, 10-year-old. We just take it out. We don't unchill filter, obviously, and then we obviously have water. But it's great because it's so different. If you've got any 10-year-old, I've go back to the 10, and you can see that they're completely two different animals with the additional water, you know, or without the additional water. So, and it's great because you can add as much or as little water and go on that journey from the 10-year-old at natural cask strength right down to wherever you want to go. So, and it is remarkable because the smokiness is on the nose. It's hard to really pick it up. But then when you add water and more water, it starts to open up as well as everything else. So it's normally peated whiskies, phenols as they call them, smokiness phenols. Phenols become more, they come out of solution at lower strength. So what happens is the addition of water will allow that phenol character to come out. And that's no different to smoky whiskies. When you add water, it will allow that smokiness to come out in the whiskies. So yeah, but the cask strength just it's one of my favourites as well, to be quite honest with you. The 10 and the cask strength, because I can't keep adding water, not too much of course, and then get to that spot that you want to get to. And you've all got different spots. Some you might put one little pipette of water in there. I love that when you see the little pipette, and it probably evaporates before it hits the whiskey. But anyway, or you can add as much as you want, but obviously don't drown it. So I always say so. But yeah, this is the latest batch. We've just come off 2012. I don't know I think there is still some 2012 out there. Batch 3, 2012. I think I can't forget the batches. And we're now on to 2013. And next year, yeah. Take a guess what we'll have next year, 2014. So
we've got some excellent taste notes coming in there, and a good question from James. We've got Philip says lovely deep citrus notes balancing the dry oak and smoke. Bob says so easy to drink at cask strength, if a little dangerous. Rich fruits, touch of molasses and spice. Need to save some for later. Jan says the flavour on the palate of this cask strength are super concentrated, which I really like. A few drops of water really enhances the smoke, and this is not messing around, and it's delicious. Jeff says tried with and without water. I think it's better with, opens up the flavour a lot. David said the 10 is now super creamy, buttery, like the 2013 is curry spices. Beautiful.
Curry spices, yeah, coriander, such like, yeah, it's definitely. Spice is a note that comes through. Different types of spices. Sometimes you can make a ginger spice and such like cloves, whatever. But yeah, spiciness is a kind of core flavour that comes through, maltiness there as well, you know.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a lovely whiskey, but dangerous is a good one. You can't drink it full cask strength, which is very dangerous to quite honest with you. You know, you can get drunk from the waist down, as I say. You know.
I know. I was at a wedding last weekend and the weekend before that, and I'm all blocked up here and up here this week, and I wasn't sure if it was the hangover or I've caught COVID or something. But this whiskey is really cutting through. I feel like I can breathe again. James has said, a random thought and question: can you water out/down the peatiness, smokiness of a whiskey? Does it water down other tasting elements, but the smokiness stays there, or comes out further? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Keith, or even Luke.
That's a difficult question, that one. It's very subjective, you know. If you add water and water, the smokiness will come out and come out and come out. Again, it will probably mask everything else to a point where you've drowned all the flavour out, you know. But normally smoky whiskies, if you keep adding water, all you're going to get is that kind of smoky burnt note coming through, which then, because the aroma threshold of phenols is quite low, same as sulphur and some of these other types of, that you don't really need an awful lot for it to become quite apparent. So, smoky whiskies. That's how we always feel that the elegant smokiness of Benromach is normally very well received because it's just a nice level. It's not really too offensive. I think the only criticism is if you're used to drinking heavily peated whiskies, it's a pretty lightweight one, to be quite honest with you, you know. But for me, it's just I know a lot of Speyside drinkers. Speyside drinkers can be,
I know they're problematic, aren't they?
Oh, they're just a nightmare. They're just an absolute nightmare, Speyside drinkers. You know,
they're the Karens of the whiskey industry, you know.
They're just snowflakes. That's what they're like, snowflakes. But yeah, they love it. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. It's got to be a Speyside.
But see, the thing is, I think snowflakes unfair, Keith, because all snowflakes are created differently, whereas all these Speyside drinkers are all the same, you know.
The same, yeah. They're cut from the same. Like that. But yeah,
We're obviously being facetious, folks. Don't you know?
I've got relations. I have got relations that peated whiskey. Oh my God, you know.
I thought you were going to say there, Keith. Some of my best friends are Speyside drinkers, you know.
No, but they just just to get them to actually try. Even Benromach, I think, oh my God, that's so peaty. And I'm thinking, really? Wait to try one of this ones, Kim. I'll say I take it an Ardbeg or Lafroy. I'll kill them.
I've said this before. We've on the chat for so people are probably sick of hearing me say it, but what I found in a previous life when I did whiskey tastings, trying to get people into peated whiskey. This may sound silly, but I don't know if you've experienced this, Keith. But if you give someone some peated barley, some actual peated barley, and let them hold it and smell it, and then taste the whiskey, it's like something in their brain switches and they understand where the smoke comes from. It's like an association thing that suddenly they're like, oh, I actually, it's like, I don't mind this. It doesn't taste like ashtray anymore. It tastes like that thing you just had.
Yep. It's that look in their face when they try it. You know, it's just like, oh my God, where's that flavour? I've never ever had that. And it is the association because, food, you do get that type of flavour in food, smokiness and such like. But in a drink, not so much really, to be quite honest. It's not common, it's very uncommon. And then suddenly when you put that in your mouth, it's like, oh my God. So yeah, I would imagine that probably is a good, because you're right, Luke, they probably understand where the flavours come from them. And their brain isn't so bamboozled by where this actual quite strong flavour is coming from. But beautiful flavour. It works so well with sweet bourbon casks, even sherry casks, and such like. And the whiskies from the West Coast, the heavily peated whiskies, are truly wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful. They're unique. They're so complex and different in all their characters. You know, all that distilleries on Islay, how they can make such individually different whiskies is remarkable. You know, so
I think Benromach's just a fantastic gateway into the world of peat. Just all around. I think for people that enjoy peated whiskies, they can appreciate it. For people that are just sort of getting getting into that and developing that sort of taste and that part of their palate. You know, it's a really good.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people say, you know, that Benromach, that's just especially 15. They say it's just enough. The 10 sometimes can just be a bit, don't know why, but the 15 is just that balance is there. That they often quite say, they say, you know, I can handle that level of smokiness. It's fine. It's not a problem. You know, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get struck down by lightning or whatever. Okay, so it's but yeah, especially 15. So, but the cask strength, yeah, this one it's a latest one.
We've sorry, got the latest one, which?
Yeah, well, it's the latest batch we've got, so it hasn't been released for long. So, but it's yeah, it's fantastically rich. It is. It's one of my go-to Benromachs after the 10-year-old.
Well, I was just going to say we've got some excellent comments in there again. We've also lost 2 people on the call, so I hope they weren't offended by our Speyside whiskey comments.
I hope not. No, I hope not. We're all friends together.
Paul says full fat whiskey, none of your semi-skimmed nonsense here. Creamy toffee with elements of toffee apples. Chris says elegant smokiness is absolutely right for this. Very nice but dangerous, neat. Would definitely go a bit of water on this one, Luke. Graham had said this is a good this too good, as mentioned earlier. Very dangerous, love it. So it's great. I got it on a treat, and this is £70 before your 15% discount. So again, that's even cheaper than the 15. It's good value. This is probably, you know, I know we're already halfway through. This is my favorite one so far. But speaking of being halfway through, we might come on to the 21-year-old.
Yep. So next one, Benromach 21-year-old. This was released a few years ago. For me, I got more personal pride from the 21-year-old being released, probably because, you know, so everyone's always personal to me with Benromach. It always will be. But I guess that young man, he started off making it and then had the 10, the 15, the cask strength, and then we had the 21-year-old. For me, it felt as if not my job is done, but it kind of came full circle that we've now got whiskey that is 21 years old. And I remember making that whiskey as a young man. And most brands have malts up to about 21 years old. That's sometimes the only portfolio they've got is up to an age like that. So for me, it felt as if the family was complete to a certain extent. And there will be older Benromachs, of course there will. But personally for me, and strangely enough, with the release of the 21-year-old, that it seemed to trigger off a lot more recognition of the 10, especially the 15 and the cask strength, and a lot of these prestigious whiskey competitions that they have around the world. You get all these lovely gold badges like Samoa Farah and all that, and lots of gold medals everywhere, like, you know. So, but it seemed to trigger it. And the only reason I could think that could be is that possibly having the whole family together, the 10, 15, such like that, you could really understand what we were trying to achieve. It took many years to do that, but then you could see what we're trying to achieve from 10, 15 cask strength, and then it's all the sibling, which is the 21-year-old. Now the 21-year-old smokiness is absolutely subtle. It is soft if you can pick it up at all. The peating levels were not quite as high, but they were still lightly peated back then. We were finding our way back then at the distillery in 98, 99, 2000. Again, these are sherry and bourbon casks, but you have that lovely, sweet, soft aromas coming through, spiciness, and lovely oaky characters coming. It keeps saying a touch of smoke, but I don't know about you guys how much smoke you're getting from that, but it's very minimal there, if at all. It's very delicate indeed, the smokiness.
I think I'm not getting much smoke. Now I never do, but I wonder also if because it's following that cask strength, that was probably, to me personally, I don't know if people on the call agree. I know we kind of touched on it when we were discussing it. felt like the smokier of the lot. So maybe, you know, comparatively, this doesn't seem smoky at all. Maybe if we'd started with this, you would feel that peat level, you know. Got some great comments coming in there. James said, my intro to Benromach was the Contrast Peat Smoke Sherry 2021, which didn't last long after the first sip. The peat level hit the sweet spot. Richard Kevin Wright, in comment to your comparing yourself to Mo Farah, said whiskey making is definitely a delayed pleasure, but worth the wait. Jeff said the 21 gets a gold medal from me, best so far. And then we've got what a beautiful nose on the 21, pear and apple wrapped in softly spicy toffee. Reverend Kevin writes, it's certainly soft and subtle, but there is a good kick of pepper. I'm an Ardbeg fan, but the hint of smoke, and this is great. Not smoky, but sherry influence. And then John finally said, in contrast to the CS, this is really sophisticated, proper old school, lovely stuff.
Yeah, it's very mellow as well, very smooth on the palate.
In terms of what John said there, it being a proper old school, it's one of the things I like about your branding. I don't know if you can elaborate a bit on that, Keith, because it is kind of classic whiskey.
It is. I mean, it's
no.
When we started off at Benromach, our story, or the reason we do it, we've never changed that. The story's always been the same, and it's a simple story, but it's very specific, and it's not difficult to understand. And all the guides and everyone understands where we come from with it. You know, we reopened an old Speyside distillery that was predominantly used for blending. By God, it failed to turn it into a single malt house, but we chose to reintroduce an old Speyside character using traditional whiskey making techniques. But most importantly, it's that lovely level of smokiness that you have for a Speyside, which is very unusual to have that. And that's what we do at Benromach. And that's the story we've carried all the way through, and we will always have that story. We don't try and change too much. I try, and everybody laughs at me within the company. And it's the old grumpy distillery manager that doesn't want to change anything. He doesn't want to progress. He doesn't want efficiencies and all this stuff, you know, which is great. In this day and age, you have to be efficient. However, my role is to make sure that this whiskey does not change. That in 10 years' time, when Luke's having another taste and I'm retired and all this, that this malt whiskey is as good as you guys are tasting today. And that is my main role. Looking at efficiencies, wonderful, very noble, and we will always do that. But the overriding character is always the way we make it and the whiskey. If you haven't got good whiskey, then you're dead in the water. You're finished. You have to have good whiskey, because that, at the end of the day, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, these gold medals and the marketing's great, but sitting there with a lovely dram, there's nothing there, and that's what it's all about. Just enjoying it, and that's what I love. I prefer. I was down with Luke last week. Thoroughly enjoyed speaking about Benromach, all the stories, and enjoying. Same as this evening, you know, and you're amongst friends, you drinking whiskey, and that's what it's. There's nothing better in life. That is what it's as good as it gets. So, and for me, that's where I get the enjoyment. Is being able to speak about Benromach and then see people enjoying it, and that's truly yeah, that's what gives me more pleasure than all these gold medals, which is good. It's nice to have that. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. You know? But as you can hear, I'm not a marketeer, and I'm certainly not a salesman, or the company would be bankrupt. That is for sure. I'm a salesman, you know, but I can speak with Benromach. That is for sure.
So that's what the branding does. It screams that consistency and touch with the past. Is that what you're saying?
It is. It's very traditional and everything. Even the likes of the packaging, which we rebranded. How many years ago now was it, Luke?
It was back in 2020 and stuff like that, when COVID unfortunately came kicking and screaming in. We had a wonderful.
Yeah, we rebranded then, which is normal for a brand that's been in the go since 2004. a total rebrand, a look at it was what you normally should do, and we did do that. And yeah, we had to absorb all the criticism that you normally get when you change the packaging. You've changed the liquid, you've done this, you're doing that. It was just absolute nonsense. The liquid's never changed. We did it because we should have done it. And to be quite honest with you, this packaging is what we should have had at the start. Because if you come to the distillery and you see everything we do at the distillery, it reflects physically what you see at the distillery. The bold lettering, the colours, all the distillery doors and such like are that bold red, Benromach red colour. The buildings are whitewashed buildings, everything, and it's got the lovely, elegant gold writing. So it has that feel as if that is exactly. When I was lucky to be able to see this packaging before they released it, and we did some trials with distributors and such like. Now I saw this. Some mock-ups and trials of it, and as soon as I saw it, I knew that we were going down the right road, absolutely. And then when you see it now, and especially with the rest of the family together, all the Benromachs, 10, 15 in the contrast, some of all the whiskies, it's absolutely wonderful. It's how the packaging should have been, and the brown spirit inside has not changed, trust me.
That's I suppose sort of what I'm asking. So I just as a little reminder, I remember selling your old Benromach years ago, and looking at it, I actually had forgotten how different it was. In my head, they weren't as drastically changed. They actually really are. But I suppose it was the
they were. There were a few changes. I mean, we looked at the branding and we changed the tins and such like, and then changed the ball and added on to it, and it was getting very confusing in even the lettering for Benromach. We were criticised for changing that. And the only thing you could see about the Benromach was this B, the big bold B. And that's the only thing you recognised on a shelf anywhere. Now, that's hopeless if you try to sell something because, as a salesman in a shop, everybody buys with their eyes. The first thing they see is the package and all this. And unfortunately, that does well, especially if you're in the gift sector and such like. So at least with this one, you look at it, you can see exactly where that whiskey's from, which distillery.
I suppose what I meant with my question was in terms of that, because the rebrand looks more old school than the current than the old packaging, if you know what I mean.
It looks quite contemporary. The last one, especially with the
more cursive style,
the ball, which was
not cursive, but the handwritten.
Yeah, that type of. Which I was never a lover of anyway, to be brutally honest with you.
It looks like it does look like an early 2000s perfume brand, but
it does. It's not but this is just, absolutely. I love the packaging. Absolutely love the packaging. Always have done. This is what it should be. It's bold, and it is classic. It's but yeah. Really good. So, but yeah, back to the whiskies.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm a small bit conscious of time, so I'm actually really keen to hear what you were about to say, Luke, and I'm really enjoying this bit of the conversation. But I suppose we pour the next one, and then if you hold that thought, we can say it in 2 seconds there, Luke. We'll just pour. Yeah. This is the single cask 2007 Whisky Shop exclusive. We've got some great comments coming in on the 21. Smokable Complex, says Chris. My favorite so far, says James. 21 is growing on me. So mellow. Love the finish. So there's another question about ABV, which I'll maybe come back to, and we'll come back to John's comment. So we'll get this poured, and you were going to say there, Luke, about the branding.
Yeah, just in terms of the branding, obviously, when you kind of tip of the spear in sales and stuff, it's the kind of first thing that you often get sort of hit with is any kind of changes. And for whiskey folk, we don't like change too much and stuff like that. And then suddenly go from one style of branding to another so quickly was a huge jump. And what we actually had is back in the start of 2020, we had a wonderful brand plan activating. So as Keith showed earlier on old pictures of the distillery, if you look at the logo of the Benromach on the new packaging that was on the 21, the font style is very similar to that old branding that was across the distillery, so the roof itself or font. So there's quite a lot of heartbacks. And I mentioned about the red of the building, the white of the building, and all these type of things. We had a wonderful kind of brand plan that was going to communicate that, and some images that kind of led from old into new and things. And unfortunately, when sort of March came around, COVID put a huge amount of unfortunate problems to everybody, including getting things like that released into market. So unfortunately, with that, and the couple of the fact that there was an online blogger which will remain nameless that leaked a lot of the images and stuff into the market for us rather unhelpfully. The change came to consumers quite abruptly. So unfortunately, the communication of that was a little bit challenging. But as Keith said, I think everybody's settled into it now. It's clear, it's bold, it's fantastic. As you said earlier, if you look at the rest of the range with the contrasts, whether it's the organic or on peat smoke and other things, they've got subtle color changes and different hues, and they just look fantastic, from sort of greys and burnt oranges and duck egg blues. There's a really nice sort of range in that now, so it's all good. But anyway, we shall get cracking on the next one.
Yeah, no, it definitely it stands out well. I was actually in the pot still in Glasgow there. Well, I mean, I was going to say a couple weeks ago, it's probably actually back in July, but it's one of those ones that it pops off the shelf, probably much better than it did. Like, yeah, it really is striking. And I don't think this is in about it. There's a couple of other, I'm trying to think now which ones. I'm trying to look around and see if I have a load of whiskey still left in me here. But there's a couple of other kind of similar whiskies that it reminds me of in terms of the typeface and that. But yeah, no, it's good. It's got that real classic look. The Reverend Kevin Wright has said, I know what you mean by bold, classic, simple, but looks like Glenturret, Knockneen do look great on the shelves. But anyway, we'll maybe come back to that, and then we'll come on to the question about the ABV. But we'll have a chat about this one quickly first. So back up in the higher ABV now after the drop down the 21.
Yeah, so this is actually the first one I've tried this whiskey. There's no tasting notes. So you guys are enough that you're gonna have to feed me with what you can get from this. So yeah, it's a single cask, and it's obviously a fast fill bourbon cask. 2007. So I'd imagine it's probably going to be a 15, 16-year-old whiskey, and it's a little bit tame. That's 57.5. A little bit tame, I say, but yeah. So it's very typical of what we have from some of our older bourbon single casks. Are absolutely beautiful. We had one last week. It was actually a Distillery Exclusive, and I think it was similar age to this one, to be quite honest with you. And it was just beautiful. The lovely, complex, delicate characters are coming through. The bananas and the pears, the estery type notes all coming through there. Again, the honey and the coconut, and that touch of smoke as well, which is very typical of Benromach. So I'm very interested in what everybody's getting from this one.
It's really interesting. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember the McVitie's Gold Bar.
Mm-hmm.
Little white chocolate with the digestive in the middle, and there's a hint of toffee or something through it. It really reminds me of that. Like, and it's actually remarkable. I don't know why that just came flooding into my head as soon as I tasted it. It's really interesting. Yeah, because it's got the caramel, the white chocolate, the kind of the maltiness. It kind of ticks a lot. Maybe not literally white chocolate, but the way it has a hint of the chocolate notes, but it's also quite sweet, which kind of, I suppose, white chocolate is in many ways. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's not a like for like, but it was just a taste that reminded me of it. Bob says, you're making me hungry, Luke, stop it. So yeah, no, David says, nose a bit harsh, but very smooth, even at cast strength. And then Bob is also the Tamdhu and Blenblair, Balblair have quite bold lettering on my shelf. And Paula said, is this TWS predominantly bourbon cask? So if it's a single cask, it is a single cask bourbon, is it not, Keith?
Single cask bourbon, yeah. Yeah, it is single cask bourbon. So yeah, I get very sweet notes in it. The front of my tongue's just tingling away. So there's lovely sweetness coming through there. So yeah, it's a lovely whiskey, very nice indeed.
It is very nice, and so with almost all, with the very odd exception, but almost all Whisky Shop exclusives, W Club members get a default 10% on. So you've already been saving 10% on this, folks, since it came out, which is it's £179. The last one, which someone had actually asked in the chat, and I never mentioned it, the cast strength is where is it? I think it's not the cast strength, it's 21 is 145. So this is slightly more than that, but obviously even with the 10% off you already get at the end of this, the discount code will give you a full 15% off. So you'll get more than what you normally get on that one. and it's limited to 218 bottles. So yeah, no, it's quite interesting. Be interested to hear some more of your thoughts. So Reverend Kevin Wright has said, this is lovely, spiced apple, very little smoke. It's a bit harsh initially, and I'm happy with the ABV, but only a drop of water makes it beautiful. David and Catherine said, on the nose, smoked apple on the tongue, toasty notes, toasted nuts, toasted seeds. So some great tasty notes there, folks. Keep them coming. Have you any thoughts on this one, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I was very keen. I've been privileged to kind of be sort of part and parcel of this one when we were originally looking at the cask samples. So I've had this one for sort of some time, so it was nice to see it sort of actually get sort of bottle. It hit its birthday and stuff, if you will, its 16th birthday back on the 26th of 26th of February, sort of this year. So it was nice to sort of get it to that sort of age sort of bracket, and then sort of see what it comes out with. But as everyone says, it's, you know, on the nose. You know, I've just added a little bit of water to mine and stuff like that. Then instantly, instead of it, you know, it just softens it off, you know, on the palate, a little less of that heat.
Yeah, I think it needs a little bit of water.
Yeah,
I think it does need a little. Just, I think it was one comment. It is slightly, you know, yeah, it does need a little bit of water. Just take that edge of it, you know, the alcohol hit, which is something to get with cask strength. That alcohol can be a little bit overpowering, and just but yeah, a little bit of water with this one opens up nicely.
No, it's
I've added a drop there myself, and it comes out with a bit more kind of fresh fruit, kind of strawberries, berries. It does change it a bit, but not as drastically as the cask strength does. But it is nice. Philippa said water really allows the sweeter side to show. Tony says a lovely, pleasing marzipan on the finish. Paul says custard comes mild char, not as peppery as the others, just hot due to ABV. Keith, you were talking about this being a single cask bourbon. You know, some on some of these tastings we get very technical about char level and everything. Do you want to give us a quick idea on A, where you source your casks from, and B,
yes,
how you char them?
We use fast fill bourbon and fast fill sherry casks. So the bourbon casks are Jim Beam Select. We buy them through the Speyside cooperage, which is a local cooperage. So they're the wholesaler. They buy thousands of them. So we don't buy them direct. We buy them via them. A sherry cask, however, we buy direct. Sherry casks are a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. You have to keep a good relationship with the bodegas in Spain. Normally, they're all family owned. Our company's family owned, so we have a good, strong relationship for many years. We've been dealing with them since the early 1990s, and we've got 3 bodegas now we actually use, and every year we keep a very close relationship with them, and then we order the casks. Most of the casks are seasoned, so they're European oak, and the casks are made new in Spain by the cooperages in Spain. Normally a bodega has a cooperage with it, so they make casks for that bodega, the winery. And we have the casks made in Spain. We can have European oak. We can have American white oak if we want, but it's mainly European oak we use. We have a toasting and charring to the specification we require, and then we'll have them seasoned for 2 to 3 years with Spanish Oloroso wine, sherry wine, and then the cask will then come over in container loads. There's always a myth that everybody seems to think that the casks come over flat pack, which is an absolute myth. That never happens, you know. They don't come from America like it used to. Absolutely did used to. But not nowadays. You know, they all come on in container loads, you know. The barrels are usually about 220 a time. The hogsheads, I don't know, 100, 110 a time, like Ken. So all made up, you know, selected, whatever, and such like. So, but yeah, and that's the cask that we predominantly use for Benromach and our sister distillery, the Cairn Gornafilm, that has now 2 distilleries. But the Cairn will have the same journey that we had 25 years ago. They're holding on to their spirit for a little bit longer, 12 years. So, but yeah, they've just got to go on the long journey that we had at Benromach. It's just time. Time's a great thing, but it always comes round. Always comes round. Time waits for no man, as I say.
No, it certainly doesn't. But it's, unlike the other cask strengths, this really needs a touch of water.
It does.
Not following the sherry influenced dram, but it's a lovely 16-year-old single cask. Still tastes hot even after water. Chris said, I think my favorite so far, hint of apricot. Paul said just about to say apricot. So apricot's a good tasting note there, lads. I think it's a great dram. It is difficult, regardless of what come before. When you're 5 whiskies in, it is difficult to kind of sometimes to pick out the more subtleties. This would be a good one. I think would be maybe to try again. Without having I had so much already. But yeah, no, it's definitely
it's delicate and subtle, and compared to especially the 2013 cask strength as such, like which is far more cooler in its character, but definitely. Different, just different,
Definitely leave it a bit of time. If I'm meant to go back at the end and stuff, if you can keep some in your glass and it will develop and change.
That's how I'm going to do it. I'll leave that.
And then it'll keep opening up. I mean, what I find, sort of fascinating and stuff, I always said to Keith, the different styles and stuff that are produced out of Benromach, the amount of different whiskies that are produced out of Benromach, a very small distillery, sort of two small stills of operation, but some fantastic, sort of whiskies. And we're sort of looking to try, 6 very, very different sort of whiskies this evening. So to sort of come out of that sort of bourbon and sherry cask mix and then try sort of the bourbon cask and stuff as its own with this first fill, you get that wonderful big vanilla hit. I think somebody mentioned earlier and stuff like that black pepper spice and stuff like that comes through from it. Lots of different characteristics that you'll get from that American oak, that that wonderful vanilla characteristic and stuff like that. Nice char levels. There's a apricot, so I think it was a perfect tasting note and stuff like that. That a couple of people mentioned that comes through. There's really come to the fore. So yeah, definitely keep going back and forward to that one as well, because it'll open up over the next sort of next 10-15 minutes for sure.
The marzipan is very interesting. And if you dig deep, you've got it. It's there. You can get that marzipan. It's in the background there, but it is there if you dig deep enough for it. It's very subtle, but it's definitely there. So.
I was never a fan of marzipan on
no,
Christmas
neither was I, but you can, you just.
Well, I was just gonna say I love it in whiskey, but whenever I encounter in actual real life, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about this. But but there you go. I'm a bit conscious of time. I'm in no rush because Ireland are losing 2-0 at the moment. So what have I got to rush off to? But we have been on an hour and a half, so maybe come on to the last one, and then we can always double back to some other questions we missed or anything else. And Kevin's advice on drinking in between is essential. You're dead right, Kevin. But hey, look, we're all here to enjoy ourselves as well.
The last whiskey is part of a contrast range. I spoke earlier on about the core style of Benromach, and that's what you got to understand what we're trying to do there. But the contrast range is there to support the core style. You can't just have a 10-year-old and that's all you got. It's not realistic. That you have to be able to see what other types of whiskey you can make from that 2 little stills we've got, as Luke described. In contrast, anything that is different to the core style goes into a contrast range. Our organic whiskey goes into a contrast range. Our triple distilled whiskey goes into any wood finishes will go into the contrast range. Peat smoke, which is our heavily peated Benromach, it goes into the contrast range. Peat smoke we've been bottling since 2007, I think, as a heavily peated Benromach. It's done in a batch, so every year the ppm, which you'll see here, the ppm is just parts per million. It's a number that indicates how heavily peated or smoky it will be, but it's a figure you get from the malt still. It doesn't tell you what you're getting in the glass. But normally you'll get, 30% of what the ppm you should get. So out of 12 ppm, we'll get 4 or 5 in the new make spirit, which is definitely enough to be able to taste. Heavily peated, throw it out of the back and such like. This one here, and we've had different batches. They're done a year. We buy one batch and we process it. So every year the ppm. We only ask for usually minimum 40. But we've had a couple of rogue ones that's been below 40, mainly because we just that's what they couldn't get the phenols any higher than that for that specific year. This one, however, is 55 ppm. Now it's matured in bourbon casks, but this is 55. We've done higher than this before. We've done around at 51 before, 57, 63, and 67. However, this one here is by far the smokiest or the most full on that we've ever had. It's not medicinal.
Oh, I was going to say, was that just me? Or have we lost Keith?
Lost Keith.
Well, he was saying it's. We'll hope he comes back in a second. There, we'll give him a minute. He was saying it's not medicinal. So what would you say it is, Luke?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this the other day in terms of the different aspects and stuff of peat and how it's often talked about that they're very, very sort of contrasting. So if you think about Islay peat, you think about peated whiskies, people come with that wonderful preconception and stuff of, lots of kind of heavy iodine and stuff like that, lots of different vegetal matter and stuff that's broken down, and you get quite complex flavors. Obviously Islay sort of being lots of coastal maturation, so briny elements that come through, lots and lots of different things. But being sort of a more of a Highland peat, you get a more influence, I suppose, of broken down heather and just general sort of trees, very simple heather gorse, quite simple products that get that more kind of I suppose woody sort of style of peat, more floral style of peat. And I think for me, when when I first sort of tried this, I'd come from a background, as I said earlier, from Edrington, so into the Freud and Highland Park, and one of the notes with the Highland Park is always that kind of heather, sort of honey, and that smokiness that comes through is quite floral, and that for me again is very similar that we get running through this. So you don't get that huge big iodine hit, that medicinal twang, that big peat reek that you get off Islay, but you just get this wonderful kind of heavy smokiness. And I always find it's a bit like bonfire smoke. If you kind of go out on November the 5th and you all sit around, the next day your clothes have got that kind of that sort of heavy sort of woody smokiness and stuff like that to them. It's more of that kind of element that for me comes through. And because it's that as Keith said, that bourbon cask element, you get that huge, again, that big vanilla hit, that citrus hit. Now, I think what somebody mentioned earlier about the 2005, and we've done a lot of different sort of additions sort of since then to try and pinpoint that. I'll be honest with you, it's not something I can do. But the last batch that we released was down to 35 ppm. And for anybody that had that or tried that, please feel free to put your hand up and comment. But for me, that one was a lot more citrus led. So earlier we talked about the European sherry oak kind of giving a more orangey citrus note to go with other flavors, whereas the American oak will give more kind of lemon and lime citrus. That for me is exactly what comes through this. You get this wonderful lemon sort of citrus that's a little bit more subtle, and the peat smoke a little bit more dominant on this one. But at 35 ppm previously, the smokiness was right down, and that kind of that lemon citrusy dominance was quite high. So you definitely notice that between the two. So I get for this one again that wonderful sweetness, that vanilla. I think somebody mentioned it earlier and stuff. I can't remember who, but that such a sweetness, and said it was almost quite confusing. So you see something and you think, okay, 55 ppm, that's huge. I think Lefroy comes in, I think, average about 44. So in your own mind, you have a preconception of what this is going to be like, but that ppm always doesn't translate through until into the final product. So you get that wonderful kind of sweetness, that wonderful sort of like lemony citrus notes, a little bit of kind of, I find personally, cured meats, a little bit kind of like Kalila. I always find that offers me that sort of little kind of slight sort of cured meat note. And then this wonderful kind of bonfire smoke. So I think I think that for me is sort of where it lies, not that heavy peat reek that you get from Islay whiskies. There's a difference. It's a really nice sort of, again, that's still stepping stone. And a lot of people that come and say, oh, I don't like sort of heavily peated whiskies, for them to try something different and realize that being from different regions or different areas, there's a huge difference in those whiskies. So on paper, although they might look the same, Lefroy has bourbon cask from Maker's Mark. We have bourbon cask from Jim Beam, both in Kentucky. the ABVs and stuff like that, 40 and 46%. There's quite a lot of similarities and stuff that go between, but the two whiskies couldn't be any more opposite. I think that's a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, no, I think that really answers Bob's question. I hope it does anyway. We've got some great comments in there. Chris said, and Keith is back, but we'll go through the comments. We've got Chris says, whoa, I love heavily peated Port Charlotte. This is definitely a good competitor, great balance. Reverend Kevin Wright says, this is great. I've always loved peat smoke. This is not too much, but enough. I like the strong vanilla. It's got the fruit of the others this evening and loads of honey sweetness. More earthy peat, says Bob. I've got a new thing to hunt down now. Sweet smokiness. Love this. David said, this is beautifully balanced between sweet / smoky / smoke / maltiness. Paul says, summer moorland fires, heathery. You mentioned obviously the 5th of November. Luke, I mean, I didn't experience a lot of that growing up, but no, I get what you mean. James says, I'm getting very herbaceous peat combined with thick cream and oak. Phil says, this is amazing, a fine balance between the smoke and sweet earthy vanilla. Graham just says, wow. So it's really gone down brilliant well. Keith, it's great to have you back. You're okay.
Yeah, I must have forgot to pay my electricity bill after it was.
Well, it's a cost of living crisis,
Suddenly it didn't give me any warning. Anyway. So yeah, it's the peat smoke it's sweet and smoky is the way I've always described it. This is the fullest on we've ever had, and we always wanted the peat smoke to be a heavily peated Speyside, which is a difficult one to try and pull off. Because normally if you put heavily peated, it's going to head towards, you can get medicinal and all that beautiful characters that you associate with West Coast whiskey. However, our peat smoke has always been sweet and smoky. This is the fullest we've ever had. And the tasting notes that it's absolutely spot on. I could not think of better tasting notes than that. It's hitting the spot every single time. But yes, it's a type of whiskey you just want to nose all the time.
No, it is absolutely gorgeous. I probably do slightly prefer the last one. Again, I think I like the big peat hit, but if you had a gun to my head and you said peat or ABV, I probably would go for ABV. But it's absolutely gorgeous. This is 46%, and I suppose maybe before I put the code in the chat for the 15% off for anyone who's looking. It's WS16BEN. Will get you 15% off all the whiskies we tried tonight. And now is maybe a good time of the night for people. Normally at the end of these tastings, Keith and Luke, we get people to rate them on what they preferred. So it'd be great if you wanted to pop that in the chat, folks. And because this is 46%, Keith, and there was a conversation earlier on asking why the 10, 15, and 21 were 43%, and particularly why the 21 wasn't slightly higher, because that particular W Clubber would have maybe preferred it at a higher ABV. They're asking, is it because of chill filtering, or what was the logic behind some of those ABVs?
It's a few things. I mean, the amount of times I got asked with the 46 on chill filter, oh my god, yeah. The truth is a few decisions that are made in there. Flavour is one, but it's a commercial decision is made there as well. Obviously, if you have 46, you're going to have less liquid, actually, So there's a balance there, and that's the truth. It's an absolute balance, and the balance there they believed was 43%, but a very mild chill filtration. And what I mean by that is some chill filtration, you drop the temperature well below zero, which is quite a heavy chill filtration. The one we have, it isn't. It's slightly above zero. I think it's about 3 or 4 degrees. Meaning, if you actually popped that peat smoke into a fridge, chances are it's going to kick a haze. We'd never up the peat smoke, but the 10 or 15, sorry, it probably will kick a haze with that, and that's just the way we've always done it. But the truth is, it's flavour and a commercial decision as well, like Ken. So, but I know what you're saying. I know that because we do 46 for the organic, and we do it for the peat smoke, and they're beautiful whiskies, and they have a beautiful texture as well. And I think unchilled filtered whiskies do have a lovely mouthfeel compared to chilled filtration. Whether there's any flavour effects, now that is such a debatable one, and I'm not getting into that conversation at all, of whether chilled filtration takes out flavour or it doesn't. It depends where you come from and how you do it, but no, it's but definitely mouthfeel, absolutely. There is a big difference between the mouthfeel of chilled filtration and unchilled filtered whiskey, like Ken. So, but yeah, flavour and commercial decision.
I mean, that's a great answer, Keith, and it's what you were saying about the amount of times you get asked it. I mean, it's something. I mean, I started working seriously in whiskey probably around 2015, 2016, and in Irish whiskey, I don't think there was a cask strength. Maybe one whiskey did a cask strength brand, and the change over the last and that period of time is scary in terms of the amount of people who the way the consumer requests cask strength, the amount of brands suddenly now doing cask strengths. When did you first introduce the cask strength into your range?
Cask strength was about 2008-9, but we had it a couple of years before that as the
100 proof, was it?
The 100 proof, yeah.
Okay, so that's going back a fair bit.
It's going back a little bit, like Ken saw, but certainly, I think there's more education now. I think the consumer is far more knowledgeable now on what happens if you add water to your whiskey or put ice in it. It kicks a little bit of haze. I think nowadays it's far more understood by especially malt whiskey drinkers compared to, chilled filtration. It definitely keeps you a lovely shiny whiskey in a glass all the way through. In some markets probably didn't want cloudy whiskey, the drunk Scotch or whatever, but times change, and it's certainly, as I said, it is a balance between flavour and a commercial decision as well, like Ken. But yeah, for me, I think flavour should always be the one that wins the battle every time. But again, it's a business decision as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get what whiskey drinkers, as a whiskey enthusiast myself, and think and are passionate about cask strength. But I mean, I from a hospitality background, ran bars for years, and for the average person, 40% is way beyond what they can handle. So let alone going up to 50s and 60s. And I was out play for a local team here in Stirling since I moved over to Scotland, and we were on a team night out there at the start of the summer. And they were, I said, we'll get some whiskies in. And literally every single one of them, I was the only person on the team of lads from the early 20s to their late 30s who were Scottish men who drank whiskey full stop, So the idea of them, it was difficult enough to get them to, I had to force some of them. I was like, come on, you're Scottish, have a whiskey. Force them to have a whiskey, let alone if I was to say, have this whiskey, but it's going to be 57% or 48%. It's just, so there is a balance between the whiskey drinker and the actual the market, let alone the other commercial considerations.
It's very strange to say that, because I mean, obviously I've worked in this job my life. I do enjoy whiskey, and I go out and have tastings, different whiskey clubs all around the world. I've done it, Strange enough, in Scotland, I always get the feeling we are the worst for knowledgeable of understanding malt whiskey at all. It's, you go to a pub in Scotland and there's 4 whiskies behind it, and most, don't get me wrong, you spoke about the pot still, and there's some fantastic, but I think in general we're very poor in Scotland for understanding a national drink and the lovely flavours that go in. And I realise that, I seem to realise that more when it comes to events like this. And last week I was down in Epsom and had a tasting there, and I've been to the European markets, and it seems to me there's a far more appreciation of malt whiskey and the flavours that go along with it and the complexities and the compared to what we have in Scotland. I think we're very lazy in Scotland, and we don't, in general, not always, not as a rule, no. But yeah, I think we should really understand our national drink a little bit more than we do,
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Even from a strictly economic point of view, I mean, what it's worth to the Scottish economy, you know, is
easy.
yeah, phenomenal. People need to, I think people in Ireland, with the growth in Irish whiskey recently, people have really gotten behind it in Ireland because they realize what this could do for tourism and for jobs and for, you know, that's huge amount of people who actually don't care about, would never drink whiskey, but have learned things about whiskey and can talk about whiskey and have educated themselves and promote it massively because they're like, this could be great for my local town, my area, my country.
Yeah. I mean, 30% of the export for food and drink is Scotch whiskey. 30%, and that's all food and all drink in the UK for export is Scotch whiskey. It's massive.
That's UK, not just Scotland, is it?
UK, no, it's the UK food and drink.
Yeah.
30% of Scotch whiskey. You know, it's a £5 billion industry. It takes in huge amounts into the exchequer and has direct and indirect employment. That's all I've ever done. My father, that's all he ever did. You know, most of my family's worked in the industry, so it's just when you live in a small town in Scotland, that's kind of all you do. Like, say if you come from like a small town in Yorkshire and you're down in pits all day. It's just we've got okay, there ain't much pits nowadays to granted like kids. So but yeah, it's coal mines as you call them. But yeah, it's all I've ever done. It's all I can do, boys. Really. I'm useless at anything else. All I can do is make whiskey.
Yeah, can't even plug in a laptop.
No, not can't
even. Reverend Kevin Wright has said, in terms of this isn't going back to the preferences, there's some beautiful comments have come in there, Keith. So we'll go through people's preferences and then we'll go through the comments and then we'll finish because this has been a fantastic tasting, but I'm conscious probably been our longest tasting ever.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Reverend Kevin Wright says Peat Smoke is his favorite, 15 in cask strength. Vicky said cask strength, then Peat Smoke, then 15. David's gone with Ben 10. Bob has said cask strength 21, 15. Ian says 4, 3, 6. 4 was, remind me, was that the cask strength or was that the 20? That was 21. Was it 4?
4
No, 4 would have been the 21. Yeah. So 21 cask strength, and then the Peat Smoke he's gone with. Gordon said cask strength, Peat Smoke, 21, 10, 15. Phil 21 CS. Then 21. I was going to say, so I was about to say the cask strength probably has come out here, but I'd say 21 has probably edged it, probably followed by the cask strength, and then the Peat Smoke. So, but there's some great, it's some great comments then coming in as well, where we have where's it gone? Sorry, I've scrolled past it. Chris says, Luke, I think this is Captain Amazing tasting, one of the best, fabulous selection of very varied whiskies. Defo needed visit to distillery. I need a bottle of 2007. But they've all been pretty amazing. Glad that you've opened a shop in Leeds. So that's the other news. Last Saturday we opened a new shop in Leeds, folks, the whiskey shop. Right. So if you're in the Leeds, Yorkshire, Lancashire area, do get down. Graham has said, can I just say before the end, this has been one of, if not the best tastings, primarily due to Keith and his love and knowledge. This has truly enhanced this evening's experience.
Thank you very much. That's really appreciated.
Yeah. Tony said, great drams, all so tough call, so good, and then he's rated them, but I just thought I'd add that comment in. There was another couple of great comments. Paula says, by now the overseas demand for uncloudy whiskey, this goes to our conversation around ABV, has surely gone. The higher ABV would sell. Bob has said, the best tasting by far since rejoining the W Club. All 6 were excellent. So lucky to taste for £20 delivered. Pretty sure I must have met Keith on one of my previous visits. Clearly very passionate about his distillery and liquid. And Reverend Kevin says fantastic value. So there's some great comments, folks. There's some more there. Tony said, Keith, you're a legend, Loon. Luke's many thanks indeed. This has only ingrained my big appreciation for Benromach even more. See anyone at the whiskey shop, Moultrie's Walk, Edinburgh tomorrow evening for blind scoring. Brilliant, Tony. Thanks. And there's some other great comments in there, folks. I won't
thank you very much. I appreciate it. Really is.
I must say, Keith, we don't always get comments like that at the end of the tasting. It really is. This isn't a normal thing. That's so it has been fantastic. So thank you to both you and Luke for coming on.
It is. I mean, thank you for coming. It's as I said to Luke last week. It's what makes the job really enjoyable, because that's what I do it for, is so people can enjoy the whiskey, and that's the main reason. It's absolutely so that comments are really really appreciate it. And thank you very much. And tomorrow I'll go in and tell the rest of the team. Raving about our whiskies. Fantastic job, guys. Brilliant. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Listen, thank you so much, Keith, for joining us, and yourself, Luke, and thank you to anyone who's watching on the recording, not just live. It's been a tremendous evening. It really has. If there's anything we've missed, please do email the reply to the email link that you got the Zoom link from, and we'll get your questions answered. Apologies about the mix-up to everyone again for the label. Hasn't happened yet in 2 years of me doing these tastings. Hopefully, won't happen again. But I hope everyone's enjoyed it nonetheless. The discount code again is WS16BEN for Ben. So that will give you 15% off all those whiskies. And so, yeah, I hope you join us again. We've got a Catalan tasting in a couple of weeks, and there should be another tasting going on sale next week as well. So stay tuned, and hopefully see you on the next one. Keith, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
Been a great tasting, and we hope you have a fantastic evening, and hopefully we get you on again down the line.
Excellent. Anytime, no problem with them. Hopefully we can see you in Speyside. Come up for a visit. Excellent.
That would be fantastic. Excellent.
Thanks again, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Luke. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you soon.
Bye.